So I just want to say something very quickly about the view. And that's because some people might get the impression that I'm being critical of the Hindu yogis by saying there's a difference between their view and the view of the Mahayana Buddhist. Now, why is view so important? Well, that's because we all accept realization is something that happens in mind, right? Therefore, it is only logical to assume that if somebody has a higher level of view, then they will also have a higher level of realization, right? So if their understanding is greater, then their realization will be greater. And so I want to be clear here. The Hindu tradition is based on a theistic view. I know this from personal experience because I have friends in India who are followers of the Hindu tradition. They claim that God is the source of everything, created the universe and everything in it, and is responsible for your happiness and sorrow. And as the position of a God is refuted within the Buddha Dharma, then one has to admit that the Hindu view and the Buddhist view are not the same. The reason why people get upset is because they don't understand what it means by progress on the path. And the Mahayana Buddhist path is a very long and progressive path. So at some point, we're going to have to talk about the paths and levels, but we don't have time for that here. So I'm just going to give you a basic idea. There are 10 bodhisattva levels, and on the first level, then you achieve liberation from samsara. Now, the practitioners of the Hinayana view achieve the state of arhatship, and that is liberation from samsara, but they only reach the first level, and they don't progress on from there. And that's not criticizing Hinayanists, because they admit that ordinary beings only achieve the state of arhatship and don't become a completely enlightened Buddha. The Bodhisattva Mahayana path, however, leads to ultimate Buddhahood, but that is a very slow and progressive path. For example, if you are of the highest ability, as the Buddha was, then it will take at least 3 incalculable eons to become a Buddha, even if you're very diligent. And so for most individuals on the Bodhisattva path, it will take much, much longer than that. And what it is taught in the text is that an arhat who achieves the first level Bodhisattva remains more intelligent or has more wisdom than a Bodhisattva of the 5th level. And then that Bodhisattva only surpasses the arhat at the 6th level. And so the arhat who has a lower level of view has a higher level of intelligence or realization than the bodhisattva until they reach the 6th level. And that's because bodhisattvas themselves progress very slowly. In the text in general, it's taught that the Hindu masters achieve a very high level of realization. And that's because they apply themselves so diligently to their shamatha meditation or samadhi. For example, one day, Shantideva was summoned by the king and queen of a Buddhist country. A Hindu master with miraculous powers had taken the country to ransom. He manifested a portal in the sky and threatened to destroy the country unless all its inhabitants converted to the Hindu tradition. Now, whether or not you believe these old stories about miraculous powers, what is clear here is that in the Buddhist perspective, that many of these Hindu masters have a higher and more powerful level of realization than their Buddhist counterparts. So we will take as an example 2 modern spiritual masters, that is, the Dalai Lama and Ramana Maharshi. The Dalai Lama is very learned in Buddhist philosophy, and not only that, he has decades and decades of experience in insight meditation that leads to final Buddhahood. Now, one could say that Ramana Maharshi has a higher level of realization than the Dalai Lama. In fact, the Dalai Lama claims to be only on the threshold of the path of juncture. In his own admission, he has not yet reached the level of insight or liberation from samsara. So there are these 2 paths before you reach the path of insight. There's the path of accumulation and the path of juncture. And the Dalai Lama, by his own admission, is only on this first path, the path of accumulation. Of course, his students believe that he is already a Buddha, but by his own admission, he has not yet reached the path of insight or liberation from samsara. He isn't even at the 1st level bodhisattva. And it is quite likely that Ramana Maharshi has within this lifetime achieved the perceptionless states, which are the 4 highest states within the mundane world. So even though Ramana Maharshi is a practitioner of a lower view, then he has a higher realization than one of the most respected teachers of Buddhism in the modern era. And there is no reason to say that in the next lifetime, Ramana Maharshi will not enter the Bodhisattva path and seek final liberation. Some people claim that the teachings on the Buddha nature are equivalent to the teachings on the universal Brahman or universal consciousness. But the existence of a universal consciousness is not something that appears in the Buddha Dharma. Buddha nature is part of the Uttara Tantra, or the highest Yoga Tantra, whereas the teachings on universal Brahman come from a lower class of Tantra. These higher Tantras completely disappeared from the Indian subcontinent at the time of the Islamic invasion in the 12th or 13th century. At that time, the Turkic Muslims put to the sword thousands of Buddhist monks and burnt down the great libraries of Nalanda and Vikramashila, and because of this, the profound Buddhist doctrine completely disappeared from the plains of northern India. So I will have to make another video to explain the paths and levels as it is presented in the Buddha Dharma. This is a very interesting topic, and this is also one of the ways of studying the progressive path of vast learning. So I hope that has been helpful for you and cleared up any doubts you may have, and I'll see you next time.